This is a major escalation, one that could shake the foundations of U.S.-Canada relations like never before. Donald Trump's tariffs war has ignited a fierce response, and Canada is not backing down. In a stunning move, the Canadian government has announced a new round of retaliatory tariffs targeting American goods. This is not just about economics anymore. This is about sovereignty, identity, and a trade battle that's now spiraling into a full-blown crisis. Let's break it down. Canada's finance minister just made it official. Starting at 12:01 a.m. on March 13, 2025, the country will impose a staggering 25% tariff on an additional $29.8 billion worth of U.S. imports. That includes $12.6 billion in steel products, $3 billion in aluminum, and $14.2 billion in other American goods like computers, sports equipment, and cast iron products. These countermeasures come on top of the already massive $30 billion in tariffs Canada implemented in response to Trump's initial trade offensive on March 4th. And if you thought Canadian officials were going to mince words, think again. They are calling this a fight for the future of their country. This isn't just about economics, it's about sovereignty. It's about fairness, a senior Canadian official stated. The White House needs to understand, we will not be pushed around. The fallout has been swift. Former U.S. Ambassador to Canada and ex-Michigan Governor James Blanchard is calling it the worst crisis in U.S.-Canada relations in modern history. It's just unnecessary. It's reckless, Blanchard said. The White House has gone from treating Canada as a partner to treating them like a 51st state. That's insulting. It's damaging. And it's hurting American workers just as much as Canadian workers. But it's not just tariffs that are causing the rift. The rhetoric from the Trump administration has fueled tensions, with the president and vice president both making remarks that Canadian leaders have called outright disrespectful. And then there's the absurd twist. Trump claims this isn't just a trade war, but a drug war because of alleged illegal substances crossing the northern border. But experts, including Blanchard, are calling that claim baseless. Less than 1% of illegal drugs in the U.S. come from Canada, Blanchard pointed out. If anything, more guns and people are flowing north than drugs coming south. This entire trade dispute is a manufactured crisis. The economic ramifications are growing by the day. North America's supply chains, from auto manufacturing to agriculture, are deeply intertwined. Canada has long been one of America's closest allies, not just in trade, but in culture, security, and history. And yet, this administration appears to be doing everything possible to damage that relationship. Blanchard also reminded everyone of a crucial fact. When the U.S. auto industry was on the brink of collapse in 2009, Canada stepped up. They contributed financially to keep General Motors and Chrysler alive. They've been there when we needed them, and now this administration is treating them like an enemy. Beyond economics, this trade war is having ripple effects on America's standing worldwide. Allies from Europe to Asia are watching closely as Trump's erratic trade policies drive a wedge between the U.S. and one of its most trusted partners. NATO allies, German diplomats, and even U.S. senators are growing increasingly alarmed at the damage being done. And here's where it gets even more concerning. Congress isn't stepping in. According to Blanchard, Republican lawmakers are afraid to speak out. There is no free speech in the Republican Senate right now, he said. They won't even stand up for our relationship with Canada, let alone Ukraine or Europe. Meanwhile, the American public is taking notice. A new CNN poll released this morning shows that 56% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. The markets are taking a hit, uncertainty is rattling businesses, and inflation fears are mounting. The very foundation of North American trade, built on decades of cooperation, is now at risk. And Trump? He's doubling down. More tariffs are set to take effect in April, as this crisis shows no signs of slowing down. As if things weren't already bad enough, experts warn that the longer this trade dispute continues, the more damage it could inflict on both economies. Small businesses that rely on U.S.-Canada trade are already feeling the squeeze. Farmers, manufacturers, and logistics companies are caught in the crossfire, with supply chains disrupted and costs skyrocketing. Consumers on both sides of the border will inevitably pay the price, with increased costs on everything from cars to groceries. Canada's response isn't just about retaliation, It's about setting a precedent. Officials warn that if the U.S. continues its aggressive trade stance, Canada will continue to escalate countermeasures. The long-term implications could include a reshaping of trade alliances, with Canada looking to strengthen economic ties with Europe and Asia to reduce its reliance on the U.S. But there's another factor at play here: politics. Canada is on the verge of a major leadership shift, with an election later this year that could further impact the direction of this trade war. If a new Canadian government takes power, will they seek to de-escalate or take an even harder stance against Trump's policies? The uncertainty is fueling anxiety in financial markets and among businesses that depend on stable trade relations. Meanwhile, the White House appears increasingly isolated. As domestic opposition grows, international allies are also voicing concerns. European leaders have expressed dismay at the growing instability in U.S. trade policy, warning that the ripple effects could extend far beyond North America. And with China watching closely, some analysts believe this trade dispute could embolden Beijing to take a more aggressive approach in its own trade negotiations with the U.S. So where does this all go from here? Will the U.S. and Canada find a way to mend this fractured relationship? Or are we witnessing the beginning of a deeper economic and diplomatic divide? One thing is certain: this isn't just another policy dispute. This is a defining moment in North American relations, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Stay tuned as we continue to bring you the latest updates on this unfolding economic war.